Welcome to my channel Mintage Mysteries, where every coin has a hidden story. If you love discovering hidden treasures and uncovering coin secrets, you're in the right place. We're on a quest to solve the puzzles behind the world's most fascinating coins. From rare errors to legendary rarities, let's dive into the mysteries of numismatics. The development of the 1989 Canadian cent can be understood as a long process shaped by national symbolism, technological change at the Royal Canadian Mint, and shifting economic pressures. Its appearance in 1989 was not simply the product of that single year, but rather the result of more than a century of adjustments to design, alloy, portraiture, and minting techniques. The following expanded script presents a detailed, continuous narrative without headings or highlighted words. The origins of the 1989 Canadian cent trace back to the 1850s, when the province of Canada prepared to replace its confusing mix of British, American, and locally issued tokens with a unified decimal system. The earliest 1-cent pieces of 1858 and 1859 established the denomination as part of Canadian economic life, even before the political formation of the Dominion in 1867. Those first cents were large, heavy, and made of bronze, reflecting the minting technology and metal supplies of the era. Over time, as Canada matured from a colony to an autonomous nation, the cent gradually shifted in design to reflect a more distinctly Canadian identity. By the 1930s, the mint sought imagery that would represent Canada in a straightforward, non-political manner, avoiding controversial or imperial symbols while still acknowledging the country's status within the Commonwealth. In 1937, it adopted the new maple leaf reverse by the British artist G. E. Kruger Gray. His design depicted two maple leaves attached to a short twig, arranged in a gently symmetrical composition. The leaves were drawn not as stylized ornaments but with careful attention to shape and natural form. The intention was to produce an image that ordinary Canadians would recognize as authentically local, rather than imported or allegorical. This design replaced earlier reverse motifs and quickly became one of the longest-running coin designs in Canadian history. It is the same design that appears on the 1989 cent, demonstrating how deeply it became connected to the identity of the denomination. While the reverse remained constant for decades, the obverse of the coin changed several times in response to updates in the official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. When she ascended the throne in 1952, all Canadian coins were redesigned to bear her likeness. The first portrait, introduced in 1953, showed a young queen with a wreath in her hair. As the decades passed, the mint revised the effigy to keep it contemporary and respectfully represent her evolving public image. In 1965, the mint adopted a new portrait by Arnold McKim, which shows the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, with a more mature and dignified expression, while still retaining the right-facing orientation used since Victorian times. This portrait remained on the cent until 1989 and therefore characterizes the version minted that year. Although tiny in scale, the engraving preserved the fine details of the tiara and facial profile, reflecting the mint's emphasis on precision even for the smallest denomination. The material composition of the cent underwent one of its most significant changes in 1982. For more than a century, the coin had been struck from bronze, a copper-heavy alloy that gave the cent its familiar reddish color and satisfying weight. Rising copper prices made this approach increasingly expensive, and the production cost of the cent began to approach or exceed its face value. To address this issue, the Royal Canadian Mint replaced bronze with a cost-saving structure, a core of zinc coated with pure copper. This change produced a coin that looked almost identical to the earlier bronze cents but was noticeably lighter and cheaper to manufacture. The 1989 cent belongs to this period of copper-plated zinc issues, an era defined by the tension between preserving tradition and modernizing production methods. The copper coating was kept thick enough to maintain the coin's traditional appearance, while the zinc core made the pieces more economical at a time when monetary authorities were increasingly questioning the viability of low-denomination coinage. The physical characteristics of the 1989 cent continue earlier standards in size and general form. The coin measures just under 20 millimeters in diameter, has a smooth, plain edge, and carries inscriptions that follow conventions established decades earlier. On the reverse, the denomination value appears above the maple leaves, with the word Canada placed beneath the twig, while the date sits prominently near the bottom. The lettering is crisp and relatively bold, designed to remain legible even after years of circulation wear. On the obverse, the Queen's portrait is surrounded by her formal title, inscribed in Latin, arranged carefully to avoid crowding the profile. The mint struck these coins in large numbers, ensuring that the dies remained sharp and that the raised features of the design were clearly defined. The 1989 cent occupies a transitional place in Canadian monetary history. Although it continued to circulate widely and was essential in cash transactions at the time, it was also part of a growing recognition that the value of the cent no longer matched its usefulness. The decision to adopt the copper-plated zinc alloy was one step toward managing the economic burden of the coin, and later decades would see further changes culminating in the eventual discontinuation of the cent in 2012. Yet despite its modest denomination and declining purchasing power, the cent of this period still embodied the national symbolism that had been cultivated for generations. The maple leaf, long associated with Canadian identity, remained a proud emblem on the reverse, while the Queen's portrait connected the coin to the constitutional and ceremonial traditions of the country. Thus, the 1989 Canadian cent stands as a detailed example of how even a small, everyday object can reflect a nation's evolving history. Its design sums up decades of artistic choices, its composition reveals economic pressures and innovative solutions, and its continued familiarity shows how deeply it was woven into the texture of ordinary Canadian life. The 1989 Canadian cent is usually considered a common coin because the Royal Canadian Mint produced over 1 billion pieces that year, which meant that most examples entered circulation and experienced heavy wear. Even though the typical circulated cent carries almost no premium, rarity and high value begin to appear when collectors look beyond everyday examples and focus on the small fraction of coins that survived in exceptional condition or display unusual characteristics created during the minting process. These distinctions create the real hierarchy of value within the 1989 issue. Uncirculated coins are the first major category of interest. When a 1989 cent has never been used, has no marks from handling, and has retained its original red copper color, it becomes noticeably scarcer. The red surface is especially important because copper darkens quickly, and very few pieces remain bright unless they were saved directly from mint sets or sealed rolls. As a result, mint state examples with strong luster become significantly more valuable than ordinary coins. The difference in value between grades is steep. A mint state coin with only small imperfections is worth more than a circulated example, but coins that reach the upper mint state levels become genuinely scarce. The sharpness of the strike, the lack of abrasions, and the preservation of the copper coating all affect desirability. Because the 1989 cent was made with a zinc core and only a thin layer of copper, the surface is easily damaged, and pristine pieces stand out immediately to collectors. Another important factor in rarity is the presence of minting errors. These errors occur unintentionally during production and can make an otherwise ordinary cent far more valuable. Misaligned die strikes, where the obverse or reverse image is shifted off-center, attract attention if the misalignment is strong enough to alter the balance of the design. Off-center strikes that cut noticeably into the edge of the coin become even rarer. Errors involving die cracks or raised lumps created by damaged dies can also increase value when they appear prominently and clearly across the design, especially if the crack forms a dramatic pattern or interrupts major design elements. Although minor die deterioration is common and not usually valuable, well-defined doubling caused by worn dies can generate collector interest, particularly if the doubling appears on the date or lettering, where it is easier to see. Coins that escape the minting process with more extreme defects, such as broad strikes that lack a proper rim, double strikes where the image appears twice, or coins struck on the wrong type of blank, are extremely rare for this year but are considered the most valuable category when they are confirmed to be genuine. These unusual pieces can sell for many times their face value because they are unpredictable and often exist in very small numbers. The market also places value on coins authenticated and graded by professional services, since grading confirms condition and removes uncertainty. High-grade examples with independent certification tend to command stronger prices, especially in the red mint state levels where small improvements in surface quality translate into sharp increases in rarity. Even though the majority of 1989 cents remain common, the small group of exceptionally preserved coins or error pieces shows that rarity does exist within the mintage, and these examples can achieve surprisingly high values compared to the ordinary cents that once filled Canadian pockets and change drawers. If you enjoyed today's exploration, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more coin discoveries, and share this video with fellow collectors. And as always, keep searching for those hidden treasures in your change. You never know when you might stumble upon the next big mystery.